Yo, yo, yo. Alright. Live, bro. We got foods. We have some reaction videos I can't wait to get into. I'm not gonna lie. We have a good Monday today. Really good Monday. Easter was yesterday. Had a good time, bro. Didn't stream because I just, had some family stuff. It was a family holiday, bro. But thank you for everybody that's been tuning in recently. I'm really just so grateful for that, honestly. We're slowly getting followers on Kick. We're slowly getting followers on Twitch, and we're picking up the pace on YouTube, surprisingly. I don't know how, and I know I'm just like speaking out there, but I don't know how, but some of these reaction videos are getting a good amount of viewers, so that's just amazing. It's really blowing my mind. I'm like speaking it into existence where, I know it, bro. One day I want to have a community, and we gonna be the best community probably on the internet. I'm not gonna lie. This my community is gonna be like the chillest community ever, bro. Because I feel like take Speed for example. Speed, he has his community. It might be loud, just like Kai's might be loud, whatever. Or Kai's might be loud, little prankster here and there, right? But say like, I don't know, man, like any other streamer, like if you think of their personality, that's legit how their community acts, which makes sense. I mean, it's their stream, but anyways, enough yapping. I'm just excited, bro. I'm just excited. I'm actually, doing this, bro. This is what I've always wanted to do, bro. Like, just action, chill. I want to do IRL content. I really do, but I don't really have, the not the funds, but like I don't have the audience for that yet. So, oh my god, yeah, I really don't got the audience for that yet. So, but that's something I would love to do. Anyways, if you're watching this VOD, shout out to you, bro. You're the GOAT. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm gonna give my own stream a like because it deserves a like, bro. Anyways, so what we got going on? I'm gonna start a stream every day too. Yeah, so I just found these reaction videos. Damn, we just got a subscriber, bro. Real life subscribe. Bro, I don't know what's wrong with my multi-chat. Forgetting what it is. Is it this? My chat. Please in the chat. Before we get started, I want to try to see if we could get the chat up. No. Okay. We should have everything here. Huh. Alright, let me test it out real quick. Works, bro. Am I getting up there? Anything? Okay, it works. It's just kind of slow, I guess. That works. I'm gonna move chat. I guess I could put chat right there. Fine. Shall we get started? Also, just posted a new short. Man, the shorts just been getting so much love, I'm not gonna lie. But damn, pretty crazy. All right, we're doing some spooky stuff. I think we got, let me see, some pretty good kind of like dead internet theory type videos, I guess. Honestly, they just look interesting, and I'm just trying to vibe. And if you have some snacks, go ahead, open them up, bruh. All right, so what do we got? So we got 3 disturbing unsolved mysteries. Doesn't seem too bad. Let's go. Cowden family.
The disappearance of the Cowden family began on Labor Day weekend in 1974. Richard, 28, his wife Belinda, 22, their son David, 5, and their infant daughter Melissa, just 5 months old, set out for what was supposed to be a relaxing camping trip in the Siskiyou Mountains near Copper, Oregon. Little did they know that this spontaneous
I'm sorry, bro, but hiking and camping, bro, and never catch me doing that.
Lead to one of Oregon's
I've only camped like maybe like a couple times in my life, but like goddamn, bro.
The family's decision to go camping was a last-minute change of plans.
You need to be an expert on it.
Had intended to spend the long weekend working on their home's driveway, planning to haul gravel for the project. However, fate intervened when the truck he planned to use for this task unexpectedly broke down. This led the family
Nope, that's already
a camping trip instead. On Friday, August 30th, 1974, the family packed up their 1956 Ford pickup truck and headed to the Rogue River National Forest campground, just outside the town limits of Copper, Oregon. This area was not unfamiliar to them. In fact, it held a special significance as Belinda's mother, Ruth Grayson, lived nearby, less than a mile from the campground.
Alright, so they were familiar.
To visit her for dinner on their way back home after the camping trip. The campsite chosen was situated near Carberry Creek. Richard, a former sergeant in the United States Air Force, had transitioned to civilian life and was working as a log truck driver. Belinda, a full-time stay-at-home mom, was devoted to caring for their young children. The family brought along their basset hound named Droopy to complete their outdoor getaway. The first day and a half of their camping trip seemed to pass without incident. However, it was the events of Sunday, September 1st, 1974, that would become the focus of intense scrutiny and speculation for years to come. On that Sunday morning at approximately 9 a.m., Richard and his 5-year-old son David were seen at the Copper General Store. This small local establishment served as a hub for campers and residents alike. Richard and David had walked to the store with a simple purpose: to purchase a quart of milk. This mundane errand, something countless families do without a second thought, would become the last confirmed sighting of any member of the Cowden family. Witnesses at the store later reported that Richard and David appeared normal and in good spirits. There was nothing to suggest that anything was amiss or that they were under any kind of duress. After making their purchase, the father and son were observed walking back toward their campground.
Alright, so it seems like everything's good right now. I don't think nothing crazy happens.
The interaction at the store would later become a crucial piece of evidence in the investigation. As the day progressed, there were no reports of unusual activities or disturbances.
Yeah, it seems like they're normal right now.
The campground, likely bustling with other Labor Day weekenders, continued its normal routines. Unbeknownst to anyone, sometime after Richard and David's return from the store, the entire Cowden family vanished without a trace. The first indication that something was wrong came later that
one thing I know from watching mysteries and shit, people don't ever just disappear.
The Cowdens had made plans to have dinner with Belinda's mother before heading back to their home in White City. When the family failed to arrive, Ruth became increasingly worried. The close proximity of her home to the campground, less than a mile, made their absence all the more perplexing. Concerned for her daughter and her family's well-being.
Alright guys, let's think about this. Goddamn, the spicy nuggets really... They ain't that spicy, bro. What the hell? Alright. You got from the convenience store to the camping grounds. What happened in between there, right? Maybe they crashed. Maybe they thought they were in the right place, the right current, the right oh my god, my mic, bro, what's going on? The right camping space, and
Ruth decided to drive to the campground to check on
like
them.
wrong
What she
location.
discovered upon arrival would set in motion one of the largest missing persons searches in Oregon's history. As she
Damn.
approached the Cowdens campsite, she was met with an eerie and unsettling scene.
Nothing
the
there.
family's truck was still parked where they had
Whoa,
left it
okay.
on Carberry Creek Road, a short distance from the actual campground. This initial observation might have provided a moment of relief, suggesting the family was still in the area.
Yeah,
However, as she
but
drew closer to the campsite itself, the signs of
nothing there.
abandonment became apparent.
Whoa.
The campsite seemed almost frozen, so to speak, as if the family had simply vanished mid-activity. On a picnic table, Ruth found Belinda's purse,
Hold on.
seemingly with all of its contents. Next to it sat the half-full milk container that Richard and David had purchased earlier that morning from the Copper General store. This detail would later become significant, as it suggested that the family had returned to the campsite after their morning errand. Near the table, a plastic dishpan full of cold water lay on the ground.
Huh.
The camp stove had been assembled and was ready for use, indicating that the family had been in the midst of their camping activities when they disappeared. Further adding to the mystery, Richard's expensive wristwatch and wallet were found lying on the ground near the campsite. The wallet still contained about $100 in today's value. This discovery immediately ruled out robbery as a motive, deepening the puzzle of their disappearance. Other personal items were scattered around the site, each piece adding to the picture. An open pack of cigarettes, identified as the brand Belinda smoked, was found nearby. The family's clothing was still in the truck, with only their bathing suits missing, suggesting they might have gone for a swim. The presence of a diaper bag and other baby items indicated that the family had been well prepared for their trip with their infant daughter. Everything at the campsite pointed to a sudden and unexpected departure, but there were no signs of a struggle or any indication of what might have prompted the family to leave. Ruth Grayson, faced with this predicament, waited at the campsite for approximately an hour, hoping that the family would
think they
return.
tried to go on a
As time
hike and then
passed
they
there
just
was no sign of anyone, her concern turned to alarm. Unable to make sense of the situation and fearing the worst, she made the decision to leave the campground and notify the authorities. The response from law enforcement was swift. The local sheriff, state troopers, and the District 3 office of the Oregon State Police arrived at the scene to begin their investigation. However, the lack of obvious signs of foul play initially hampered the urgency of the response. Lieutenant Mark Kazar, who would later head the case, admitted that the investigation had been delayed for maybe a day because there was no clear indication that anything violent had occurred at the campsite. State Trooper Erickson was later quoted saying, "That camp was spooky. Even the milk was still on the table." The search continued until nightfall, with officers
I'm saying they had to go on a hike or
any
something.
clues or signs of the missing family. As darkness fell and visibility became too poor to continue, the initial search was suspended until the following morning. The next day, September 2nd, brought a small but significant development. The Cowdens' pet dog was found scratching at the front door of the Copper General store. The dog's appearance raised more questions than answers. How had Droopy become separated from the family? And why had the dog returned to the last place it had seen Richard and David rather than staying at the campsite? The discovery of Droopy alive and unharmed provided a glimmer of hope that the Cowdens might also be found safe. As news of the disappearance spread, it captured the attention of the local community and soon made headlines across the state. The idea of an entire family vanishing without a trace from a popular camping area was both frightening and fascinating to the public. It touched on primal fears of the dangers that might lurk in the wilderness and the vulnerability of families in isolated areas. Ground teams combed through 25 miles of roads and trails surrounding the campsite. Helicopters and planes equipped with infrared imaging technology flew over the area, hoping to detect any signs of recent disturbances in the soil or hidden remains. Creeks and other bodies of water were examined to rule out the possibility of accidental drowning. As days turned into weeks with no sign of the family, the investigation broadened. Law enforcement conducted over 100.
Alright, I'm thinking they went on a hike, right? Family? I don't even know you can hear me. Family hike, and maybe they just got lost or went for a swim, or really Or it could be
50 interviews with
nah, I was gonna
individuals who
say
might
like
have information
publicity,
related to the case. A
but
reward equivalent
nah,
to over
I don't think.
$12,000 today was offered for information leading to the family's whereabouts. The disappearance of the Cowdens occurred during a time when several other women had gone missing in Washington and Oregon.
Oh, okay,
Initially,
hold on.
investigators explored possible connections between these cases and the family's disappearance.
Yeah, like
However,
serial
these
killer.
other disappearances were later linked to a particular serial killer, and no connection to the Cowden case was established. The lack of progress in the case frustrated many, leading to a petition signed by over 200 citizens requesting that the FBI take over the investigation. However, this request was denied on the grounds that there was, quote, no evidence that the Cowdens had been kidnapped or taken across state lines, which would have been necessary for FBI jurisdiction. As weeks turned into months, the official search was scaled back, but friends and relatives of the family continued to spend their weekends and
that's
vacation
sad,
time
bro.
searching the area, clinging to the hope of finding answers. 7 months after their mysterious disappearance, the fate of Richard, Belinda, David, and Melissa Cowden was finally revealed. On April 12, 1975, 2 gold prospectors from Forest Grove, Oregon were hiking through the rugged terrain near Carberry Creek, approximately 7 miles from the Cowdens' original campsite. As they made their way along a steep hillside, they stumbled upon a horrifying sight that would change the course of the investigation.
Oh, maybe a bear attack?
The first body they discovered was that of an adult male, later identified as Richard Cowden. His remains were found in a disturbing position, tied to a tree on the hillside. This scene immediately suggested foul play and ruled out any lingering hopes that the family's disappearance might have been voluntary or accidental. Approximately 100 feet away from Richard's body, the prospectors made an even more chilling discovery. Hidden beneath a rock outcropping on the hillside was a small cave. Inside this chamber, they found the remains of an adult female, a young child, and an infant. These bodies would later be confirmed as those of Belinda, 5-year-old David, and 5-month-old Melissa. The cave entrance had been carefully sealed with rocks, indicating a deliberate attempt to conceal the bodies and delay their discovery. Upon the discovery, the prospectors immediately alerted the authorities. The Oregon State Police, Jackson County Sheriff's Office, and other relevant agencies quickly
serial killer
mobilized to secure and process the crime scene. Former detective Richard Davis described the moment he received the call about the discovery. Right then, I mobilized everyone I can get. I need help. I'm one man. I can't search the forest. I need help, he recalled in a 2020 interview. The crime scene presented unique challenges for investigators. The remote location, coupled with the 7 months that had elapsed since the family's disappearance, meant that much of the physical evidence had been exposed to the elements. This exposure potentially destroyed or degraded crucial clues that might have helped identify the perpetrator or shed light on the sequence of events leading to the family's deaths. Despite these challenges, law enforcement meticulously combed the area for evidence. Davis later recounted that they bagged everything up down to the mineral soil. The autopsies of the family members revealed the brutal details of their deaths. Belinda and 5-year-old David had both died from .22 caliber gunshot wounds to the head. The fate of baby Melissa was even more heartbreaking. The autopsy revealed that the 5-month-old had died from severe blunt force trauma to the head. This brutal act against an infant added an even more disturbing dimension to an already horrific crime. The cause of Richard's death.
What kind of... Dude, who does that?
Difficult to determine. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, medical examiners were unable to conclusively establish how he died. However,
like, bro, that's a child.
Tied to a tree strongly suggested that he had met a violent end, possibly after witnessing the murders of his family or in an attempt to protect them. One of the most crucial pieces of evidence recovered from the scene was a single bullet identified as belonging to a Marlin manufactured rifle. This discovery was both promising and frustrating for investigators. While it provided a potential link to the murder weapon, the absence of the firearm itself left a significant gap in the evidence. The location where the bodies were found raised additional questions. At approximately 7 miles from the family's campsite, it was far enough to suggest that the Cowdens had either been led or forcibly taken to this remote spot. The discovery of the bodies also shed new light on earlier search efforts. A volunteer who had participated in the initial search reported that he had actually been to the location where the bodies were eventually found. However, he stated that at the time of his search, the small cave had been empty. This information, if accurate, suggests the possibility that the bodies were moved or concealed sometime after the initial disappearance, adding another layer of complexity to the timeline of events. In the days and weeks following the discovery, investigators pursued several lines of inquiry. They re-interviewed witnesses.
Were they still alive when they were searching? But they were probably like in another part of the forest.
From
and
the
then they
original
got
disappearance,
nah,
now
that's
armed
crazy.
with new information about the family's fate. They also expanded their search for anyone who might have purchased a Marlin manufactured rifle capable
Rest
of
in
firing
peace,
the type
bro.
of bullet found at the scene. Not long after, Dwayne Lee Little emerged as the primary suspect in the Cowden
I swear to
family
God,
murders,
it's this
though
dude.
he was never formally charged with the crime. Born in December 1948, Little had a troubled past and a history of violence that made him a person of interest in the case. Little's criminal history began at a young age. On November 2nd, 1964, when he was only 15 years old, he committed his first known murder. He raped and killed 16-year-old Orla Faye Phipps in Oregon. This brutal crime shocked the community and resulted in Little receiving a life sentence in 1966. Despite the severity of his crime, Little was paroled from the Oregon State Penitentiary.
Oregon, what the fuck are y'all doing?
In Salem on May 24th, 1974, after serving just 8 years of his life sentence. This early release would prove to be a controversial decision, as Little's time in prison appeared to have done little to reform his violent tendencies.
Well, no shit, his fucking first name is Little.
The timing of
last
Little's
name
release became significant in the Cowden
I-
family case. He had been out of prison for only 3 months when the family disappeared. State police were able to determine that Little
That judge
had been in the
has to be
Copper
rage
area
bait,
over
there's
the
no
Labor
way.
Day weekend, coinciding with the time the family vanished. Several additional factors, including suspicious travel claims, firearm evidence, refusal to cooperate, and more also played a role. Despite these suspicious circumstances, investigators were never able to gather enough concrete evidence to charge Little.
I mean,
with the
like,
Cowden
brother,
family
like,
murders.
he's not-
The case against him remained largely circumstantial. Additionally,
He's not
a miner who owned a
cooperating, like,
cabin
come on,
near the
bro.
crime scene claimed that Little and his parents had stopped by on Monday, September 2nd, 1974, and signed a guest book he kept for visitors. This suggested that Little had familiarity with the area where the bodies were eventually found. Little also claimed to have driven from Crescent City, California to Rouge on the day the Cowdens disappeared.
I mean, he can claim
he
it, but
denied
like,
being in Copper, despite it being on his most direct route home. This inconsistency raised suspicions among investigators. On June 2nd, 1980, Little committed another horrific crime. He picked up a pregnant 23-year-old woman named Margie Hunter, whose car had broken down near Portland, Oregon. Little proceeded to assault and brutally beat Hunter. Miraculously, both Hunter and her unborn child survived the attack. This attack led to Little's final incarceration. He was charged and convicted of attempted homicide and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. Throughout his time,
God damn, bro, 3 life sentences?
in prison, Little was reportedly uncooperative with mental health treatment and refused to discuss any of the murders he was accused of committing.
Like what causes a person to do this? Genuinely, like, I know this was a different time, but that still doesn't matter, bro. Like, what causes a person to just mentally... that's just crazy, bro.
Cowden murders was further complicated by conflicting testimonies. Floyd Forsberg, a former cellmate of Little's, claimed that Little had confessed to the Cowden murders. However, this claim was later recanted, leaving investigators without a solid confession.
Well, no shit, he ain't gonna confess, bro. Like, Austin
On the evening
Yogurt?
of December 6th, 1991, a horrific crime occurred in Austin, Texas. 4 teenage girls were murdered at an I Can't Believe It's Yogurt shop. The victims were Eliza Thomas, 17, Jennifer Harbison, 17, Sarah Harbison, 15, and Amy Ayers, 13.
Rest in peace.
And Jennifer were employees at the yogurt shop working the closing shift that Friday night. Sarah and Amy, friends of the older girls, had come to the shop to get a ride home with Jennifer after the store closed at 11 p.m. The events of that evening began to unfold as the shop was preparing to close. Around 10 p.m., approximately an hour before closing time, a man entered the shop and asked to use the restroom in the back. Witnesses later reported that this individual took an unusually long time in the bathroom, and there was speculation that he may have tampered with the rear door, possibly leaving it unlocked or jammed open. As the clock approached 11, Jennifer locked the front door of the shop to prevent any more customers from entering. A couple who left the shop just before closing time later told investigators that they had noticed 2 men sitting at a table, behaving in a sneaky manner. This observation would later become a crucial piece of information in the investigation.
Okay, what does that mean though? A sneaky manner? sneaky.
as police sought to identify these two individuals who were never located. What transpired after the shop closed remains a subject of speculation.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's just sad looking at these pictures, bro.
Based on
like, at least for me, like, I don't know why. It's just when I see a picture of like a victim of a horrific accident, bro, it's sad for me to look. Because it's like, damn, like, you know, I just think about the families and like,
entered the shop either after closing or perhaps,
you know, it's just sad, bro.
The girls were forced into the back storage room of the yogurt shop where the horrific assault began. The girls were forced to undress and were bound with their own clothing. According to officials, at least one of the victims and possibly more was assaulted. The perpetrators then proceeded to shoot each girl execution style in the back of the head.
What?
The brutality of the
like,
crime was further compounded by the perpetrators' attempts to cover their tracks. After committing the murders, the killers set fire to the yogurt shop using paper plates, cups, and cardboard from the store that had been soaked in lighter fluid. This act of arson was likely an attempt to destroy evidence, but it would also lead to the discovery of the crime.
Well,
At
no
approximately
shit.
midnight, about an hour after the shop had closed, a police patrolman noticed smoke coming from the yogurt shop. He immediately reported the fire to his dispatcher. Firefighters quickly responded to the scene, unaware of the grisly discovery that awaited them. As the firefighters worked to extinguish the flames, they made a horrifying find. In the back storage room of the shop, they discovered the bodies of 3 of the girls, Eliza, Jennifer, and Sarah. Their bodies had been severely charred by the fire. The body of the 4th victim, Amy Ayers, was found in a separate part of the shop, about 10 feet away from the others. Unlike her friends, Amy's body was not as severely burned, having suffered 2nd-degree and early 3rd-degree burns on 25 to 30% of her body. She was found with a, quote, sock-like cloth around her neck. The positioning and condition of the bodies provided investigators with crucial, albeit disturbing information about
I swear to God.
The 3 girls found in the storage room, Eliza, Jennifer, and Sarah, had all been shot in the back of the head with a single gunshot wound. Amy, however, had been shot twice. The first bullet had missed her brain, while the second had caused severe damage, exiting through her lateral cheek and jawline. The fire had burned so intensely that it melted the upper rungs of a thick aluminum ladder in the rear of the business. This intense fire, combined with the water used by firefighters to extinguish it, severely damaged the crime scene and destroyed countless pieces of potential evidence.
That sucks.
Despite the perpetrators' attempts to destroy evidence, investigators were able to recover some crucial physical evidence from the scene. They determined that 2 different firearms had been used in the murders, a .22 caliber revolver and a .380 semi-automatic
so it
pistol.
was 2?
Spent rounds from both these weapons were recovered at the scene. Perhaps most importantly, investigators were able to recover
So it was two
a small sample of male
2
DNA
weapons
from one of the victims. This DNA evidence would become a central focus of the investigation in the years to come, as advances in forensic technology offered new hope for identifying the perpetrators. The discovery of the crime sent shockwaves through the Austin community. The city had never seen a crime of this magnitude and brutality before. The fact that the victims were young teenage girls killed in such a violent manner in a place as innocuous as a yogurt shop added to the sense of horror and disbelief.
Man,
On December 10th, 1991,
that sucks,
more
bro.
than 1,500 people attended the funeral for the victims. A $100,000 reward was offered by a private group of entrepreneurs for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the perpetrators. This substantial reward generated numerous tips and leads, which investigators followed up on. As the investigation progressed, several theories emerged about the motive behind the crime. Initially, investigators believed that the murders may have started as a robbery gone wrong. However, the extreme violence of the crime and the assault of at least 1 victim suggested that robbery may not have been the primary motive. The organized method of operation, the perpetrator's ability to control 4 victims, and the destruction of evidence by arson pointed to an adult experienced in crime rather than teenagers, according to one of the original detectives on the case.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like... Okay, so the execution style seems like it's someone who like at least tried, like watched a movie, or is like someone who's fixated on that, because just the way this crime was set up just seems odd. Like someone's been plotting, but not specifically on the victims, but just specifically on the way they're performing the crime.
This assessment
just
added
weird.
another layer of complexity to the investigation as it expanded the
It's
pool
weird.
of potential suspects. In the weeks and months following the murders, detectives pursued countless leads and interviewed hundreds of potential witnesses and suspects. The investigation cast a wide net, with over 1,000 potential suspects being investigated over time. One of the early leads came on December 14th, 1991, just days after the murders. Maurice Pierce, a 15-year-old, was arrested at North Cross Mall
maybe.
for carrying a .22 caliber gun and 16 bullets tucked into his pants. Former police detective Hector Polanco questioned Pierce about the murders. He allegedly told Hector that his friend Forrest Wellborn had used the gun to commit the crime. This
Guilty.
led to the questioning of Pierce and 3 of his friends,
Guilty.
none of whom were older than 17 at the time. However, after intense questioning, detectives decided that Pierce was likely trying to get himself out of the gun charge and eliminated him and his friends as suspects at that time. The investigation was further complicated by the numerous false confessions that poured in. Over 50 people falsely confessed to the murders, each requiring thorough investigation and ultimately diverting resources from other potential leads. These false confessions would continue to plague the investigation for years to come. In March 1992, Detective Hector was removed from the yogurt shop investigation. He had developed a reputation for coercing confessions from suspects, which raised concerns about the integrity of the investigation. This change in personnel was just one of many that would occur over the course of the long-running investigation. As the months turned into years, the case began to grow cold. Between 1993 and 1996, tips continued to come in, but no arrests were made. In 1996, the investigation was reorganized under APD Detective Paul Johnson. As part of this reorganization, investigators decided to revisit old tip files, including the one related to Maurice Pierce. This decision to re-examine old leads would eventually lead to significant developments in the case, although not for several more years. Throughout the initial investigation, the FBI's profile of the killers played a significant role. According to their analysis, the perpetrators were likely white and in their late teens to mid-20s.
Okay.
The FBI suggested that one
Makes
had
sense.
a dominant personality and had led one or more reluctant participants. This leader was believed to be familiar with the area around the yogurt shop, emotionally immature, an underachiever with a criminal record, and
Makes
prone
sense.
to anger easily. While this
Makes
profile
sense.
seemed to align with some aspects of Pierce and his friends, it did not immediately lead investigators to focus on them as primary suspects. On October 6th,
Why though?
1999, the Austin Police Department announced the arrest of 4 suspects in connection with the murders. The suspects included Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, and Forrest Wellborn. All 4 had been teenagers at the time of the murders in 1991. The new investigators decided to re-question the men. During intense interrogations, 2 of them, Robert and Michael, confessed to the yogurt shop murders and implicated Pierce and Wellborn in the process. These confessions became the primary basis for the arrest of all 4 men in October 1999. However, the case against the 4 men was controversial from the start. There was no new physical evidence tying any of the 4 men to the crime. The arrests were based primarily on the 2 confessions. Michael Scott's confession came first. He was questioned over 4 days, during which he told investigators that he and the others only intended a simple robbery. According to him, they had cased the yogurt shop earlier that day and then returned after dark armed with 2 guns. Scott's confession was followed by that of Robert. Both men provided detailed accounts of the crime, but their stories would later become a point of significant controversy. It's important to note that both men later recanted their confessions, claiming they were coerced by police during lengthy and intense interrogations.
I mean,
Robert later
what?
explained, "I
Like-
was berated and berated and berated by the police officers. Until they obtained what it was they wanted to hear, they were not going to allow me to leave. And basically, they broke me down." The interrogation tactics used by police came under scrutiny.
Bro,
A
what?
photo later emerged showing a police officer holding a gun to Michael Scott's head during his interrogation, raising serious questions about the methods used to obtain the confessions. Despite the controversial nature of the confessions, the arrest initially seemed to bring a sense of closure to the case.
Okay, but
However,
it-
this would prove to be short-lived. While all 4 men were initially charged, the cases against 2 of them quickly fell apart. Charges against Forrest Wellborn were dropped in 2000 after 2 grand juries declined to indict him due to lack of evidence. Maurice Pierce spent 3 years in jail before he was freed in 2003. Prosecutors admitted there was not enough evidence to convict him. Notably, ballistics tests later showed that the .22 caliber gun Pierce had been arrested with in 1991 was, quote, probably not used in the murders, contradicting the initial suspicions that had made him a person of interest. This left Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott as the remaining suspects, despite the lack of physical.
My bad for not stopping, but this one is so weird where it's like they just don't have enough evidence to prosecute them.
Connecting them to the crime, prosecutors moved forward with their cases based primarily on their confessions. In 2001, nearly 10 years after the murders, Robert Springsteen was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. The following year, in 2002, Michael Scott was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. However, these convictions would not stand. In a significant turn of events, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals overturned Robert's conviction in 2006 and Scott's in 2007. The court found that there had been violations in how their alleged confessions were used at trial by prosecutors. Specifically, the appeals court ruled that the men should have been given the chance to cross-examine each other during their trials, as excerpts from each other's confessions had been used against them. The overturning of the convictions was a major setback for the prosecution and reopened the question of who was responsible.
This whole trial, like, this is just an example on how not to do a trial. Like, this should just be taught in class
about the
if you're going to law school or something. Like,
tactics used by police to obtain them. In the years following the overturned convictions, new DNA technology would cast further doubt on the involvement of Robert and Michael. In 2008, advanced DNA testing was conducted on evidence from the crime scene. The results revealed male DNA that did not match any of the 4 men who had been arrested. In light of this new evidence, Robert and Michael were released on bond on June 24th, 2009, more than 9 years after their arrests. The Travis County District Attorney's Office announced that they were not prepared to go to trial, given the DNA results that failed to connect the suspects to the crime scene. In October 2009, all charges against the two were formally dismissed.
So
Harvey McLeod, a 65-year-old cab driver from Modesto, California.
Wait, hold on. Is that it? Like, what? So, the killer
found himself at the center of a terrifying crime on January 8th, 1996.
So are we just gonna skip, like, the possible killers? Just
experience as a cab driver spanned over a decade, during which he had encountered a wide array of passengers and situations. His years of service had equipped him with a calm demeanor and an ability to handle unexpected circumstances. However, nothing in his extensive career could have prepared him for the events that unfolded on that winter day. Harvey's ordinary workday began like any other, with him navigating the streets of Modesto in his taxi, picking up and dropping off passengers. His colleagues knew him as a reliable and dedicated worker, always punctual and professional in his dealings with customers. Eventually, a man who hailed Harvey's cab stood out immediately due to his unusual appearance. He was wearing a turban and had adorned himself with what Harvey quickly recognized as a fake beard and mustache. This disguise, while noticeable, didn't initially alarm Harvey, who had seen his fair share of eccentrically dressed passengers over the years. As the man entered the cab, he spoke in a coarse whisper, adding another layer of peculiarity to his demeanor. The passenger's first interaction with Harvey seemed relatively normal for a taxi ride.
Bro, if you're still a taxi driver in 2026, prayers to you, man. Like, you
informed the driver that he only had about half of the required
you could easily
fare,
switch to Uber or whatever, but you could easily just switch to another job, bro.
Which he claimed was on their route. This type of request, while not ideal, was not uncommon in Harvey's line of work. And
that shit is just the amount of robberies and I'm good.
As they drove. The passenger revealed his true intentions, transforming what had started as a routine fare into a nightmare scenario. In a shocking move, the man produced a black metal box equipped with a numeric keypad. With swift and deliberate actions, he chained this device to Harvey's body.
Is that a bomb?
Became immediately apparent to Harvey as he felt the cold metal against his skin and heard the click of the chain securing the box to him. The assailant didn't stop there. He took a wire lead and wrapped it around Harvey's neck, clipping it shut.
What? Wait, is he doing this in the back seat? Like how?
The passenger then made a disturbing claim. The device he had attached to Harvey was an explosive bomb. To drive home the threat, the man appeared to activate the black box right in front of the terrified cab driver. The culprit, having established control over Harvey through the threat of the supposed bomb, began to reveal his true plan. Over the next 10 minutes, as they drove back towards Modesto, the assailant provided Harvey with detailed instructions for robbing a bank. Not only was he being held hostage with what he believed to be an explosive device, but he was now being coerced into participating in a serious crime. As part of the robber's elaborate scheme, Harvey was instructed to take another box into the bank, which the gunman claimed.
Okay, I'm thinking like this dude really attached a somewhat, well, we don't know, it's a real bomb, but a bomb to someone, and it's like, yo, you're gonna help me rob this bank, bro. Like, brother, like, what? Like,
contained a second bomb. This additional threat
there's
was
no
designed
way.
to ensure compliance not just from Harvey, but from the bank staff as well. The level
like,
of planning and the multi-layered nature of the threat demonstrated that Harvey was dealing with a
yeah, like, because every single person who robbed the bank was successful in history. Yeah, so I guess it's my turn, right? Like, brother,
sophisticated and determined criminal. Upon arriving at the
this
bank,
is just
Harvey
so
found
like
himself in the unthinkable position of having to carry out the robber's instructions. With the perceived threat of explosives on his person and in the box he carried, he entered the bank. Inside, he approached.
Brother, name me one successful bank robbery ever in history. Ever. Like, I've never heard of that.
And handed her a letter containing demands.
So all the bank robberies I've heard about, just police instantly, boom, one tap. Like,
to avoid
there's
detonation
just
of the supposed bombs. After Hutchinson and another
like, that's
bank
the
employee
dumbest,
complied with the demands,
with the
criminal amount of money
like
specified in the letter, Harvey left the bank.
I
He was still under the impression
just blows
that
my
he was
mind, bro.
carrying live explosives and that his every move was being monitored by the gunman. It was after leaving the bank that Harvey's true character shone through. Following the gunman's instructions, he drove to a hardware store located about 15 minutes away.
Is it really a bomb though? I don't know.
And left behind both the stolen cash and his car keys as per the robber's demands. However, Harvey decided to take action rather than passively wait for further instructions or potential
Yes,
harm.
sir. W. Harvey
walked approximately half a mile to the nearest payphone. This decision was fraught with risk. He was still wearing what he believed to be an explosive device, and he had no way of knowing if the gunman was watching him or if any sudden movement might trigger the supposed bomb.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, Harvey made the call to law enforcement, alerting them to the situation and potentially saving lives in the process. Harvey's decision to contact the authorities set in motion a rapid response from law enforcement.
So was the robbery successful? Ain't no way.
Police quickly arrived at the scene, and the area around Harvey was swiftly evacuated. The bomb squad was called in to assess and deal with the device strapped to his body. During this time, Harvey found himself at the center of a tense and frightening situation, isolated as he waited for the bomb squad to determine the nature of the device he was wearing. The resolution of the
is it a real bomb though? I don't think it is.
The bomb squad successfully removed the device from Harvey. Subsequent X-ray analysis revealed that both the device attached to Harvey and the one left at the bank were in fact fake. This discovery, while bringing immense relief, also highlighted the psychological sophistication of the crime. The gunman had managed to control not just Harvey, but an entire bank staff through the threat of explosion without ever putting himself at risk of handling real explosives. With the immediate threat neutralized, investigators turned their attention to gathering evidence and witness accounts. The crime scene extended beyond the bank, encompassing the route Harvey had driven and the location where he had left his cab with the stolen money. Forensic teams combed these areas for any physical evidence that might lead to the identification of the gunman. Inside the bank, investigators interviewed staff members, including manager Denise Hutchinson, who had directly interacted with Harvey during the robbery. Their accounts provided crucial details about the gunman's demands and the fear he had created. Bank security footage was carefully reviewed, though it revealed little about the gunman himself, as he had not entered the premises. Perhaps the most significant breakthrough in the early stages of the investigation came from two witnesses who reported seeing an unusually dressed man outside the bank at the time of the robbery. Their description of the suspect was fairly detailed. A man approximately 6 feet tall, weighing about 160 pounds, with short-cropped silver or salt and pepper hair. This description closely matched the appearance of the man Harvey had picked up in his cab, providing corroboration for Harvey's account and giving investigators a clear picture of the
thinks of this?
However, the witness accounts had limitations. Despite noticing the suspect's unusual appearance, they were unable to provide a license plate number or any information about a getaway vehicle. This lack of crucial identifying information would prove to be a significant obstacle in the investigation. Investigators also focused on Harvey's cab, which had been left at the hardware store as per the gunman's instructions. Forensic teams thoroughly examined the vehicle for fingerprints, DNA evidence, or any other clues the perpetrator might have left behind. The fake bomb devices were also subjected to detailed analysis, with experts hoping to find a trace evidence or unique components that might lead to the gunman's identity. As the investigation progressed, detectives worked to piece together a timeline of events. They retraced Harvey's route from the initial pickup point to the bank.
So there's just no cameras anywhere else but the bank? Like, come on, bro.
And to the hardware store where he had left his cab. Security camera footage from businesses along this route was collected and analyzed, searching for any glimpses of the suspect or potential accomplice.
Like, where was the dude when he had to go inside the bank? Like, was it sure he was outside? What about like him driving away from the car? Like, come on, bro.
The instructions left for Harvey in the cab were of particular interest to investigators. These detailed directions, which included the location where Harvey was to leave the money,
like DNA, like
waiting for a call with directions to dismantle the bomb, suggested a high level of planning and familiarity with the area. Investigators likely considered the possibility that the perpetrator had local knowledge or connections. In the days and weeks following the robbery, law enforcement conducted extensive canvassing of the areas involved in the crime. They interviewed residents and business owners, hoping to uncover additional witnesses or security footage that might have captured the gunman before or after the robbery. The investigation also delved into Harvey McLeod's background and personal life. While he was clearly a victim in this crime, standard procedure dictated
come on, bro. Really?
To rule out any potential involvement or connection to the perpetrator. Harvey's long career.
I mean, brother, if it was him doing it, why do you like? Oh my God.
Driver was scrutinized for any unusual incidents or passengers that might be relevant to the case. Despite the intensive investigation as of February 2025, nearly 3 decades after the incident, the case remains unsolved. The statute of limitations has expired on the robbery charge, but the kidnapping charge is still active. This case has drawn comparisons to other crimes involving fake bombs used as coercive devices. In 2003, the infamous pizza bomber case in Erie, Pennsylvania saw Brian Wells forced into robbing a bank while wearing an explosive collar that ultimately detonated, killing him. More recently, in 2020, a man in Baltimore forced an unlicensed cab driver at gunpoint to wear what appeared to be an explosive vest during another bank robbery attempt. This suspect was caught, unlike in Harvey's case. While these cases share thematic similarities, there is no direct evidence linking them to the one we just went over.
Okay. So WVid, my only
if you were surfing the net in the 2000s or just had a
my only complaint with the video, bro, is that like, bro, it's clearly a network of criminals doing the same shit, but or maybe it could be the same person and he actually figured out how to build a fucking bomb. But oh my God, like that's just crazy, bro. WVid, yeah. Let's keep it going. All right. What is 24 minutes? That's not too bad. What's 37? That's some music? Yeah, I mean, I could do some music. I was just gonna react to this. Like what music you got? was finna do this video. Russian music? I mean, I don't know Russian, but yeah, I can do that. Yeah, sure. I think you can put a link. I'm pretty sure you could just link the video. Big baby. Okay. I got you. Let me look this up. Is this self promo? Self promo, perhaps.
Mercedes.
No. Okay. Let me see. Your friend's music. Okay. Sure. Alright, let me see. Yeah, we can do that. Why not? Oh, wait. Let me see real quick.
Mercedes.
So this is Russian. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna pause it right here. Just because I don't know what he's saying, but I can read the subtitles. I like that. I mean, for Russian, I mean, it's not too bad. Not too bad. I don't know how in Russia, like, if this, you know, this is pretty good, but. It's good. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, like, honestly, my honest thoughts for Russian music, like, I mean, I think it's good. Only thing I'd say is maybe the mixing could be a little better. I don't know if he went to do you know if, like, you went to the studio for this, or was it like a home studio? So like a home studio, or is it like, because I could tell maybe, like, I don't know if it was the mic quality or the mixing. It was in the studio. Okay, yeah. So I don't know if it was mixed by an actual, like, audio engineer or not, but the mixing, okay, is YouTube quality. All right, yeah. All right. Yeah, it probably is the YouTube quality, because YouTube fucks it up sometimes, but I got you with another one. I got you. I mean, it's not bad. I just don't know Russian, like, at all, but. Alright, let me see this. See, like I can already tell, like this is already mixed well and mastered well already. I can tell. Like this was made in a studio. Yeah, I don't know what he's saying, but
Я плачу под Фединка, вчера плакал по Чайковского. Беру сумку Гоярд, я надел костюм от Боская. Туре по России, мы в прямом эфире. Моя страна большая, прямо как там говорили. Это все понты, это все понты. Если ты мужчина,
I mean, I like the mixing and mastering on this. I mean, I don't know Russian again, but I mean, if I knew Russian, it definitely sounds like a vibe. Maybe not like the beat, maybe some like, you know, like the beat could be a little better, but I think it's really mixed and mastered very well. And seems like he's good at rapping, so that's already good. Yeah, maybe just a little bit more catchier beat if I was Russian. But again, I'm not Russian. But honestly, not bad. Like I could tell for the quality of music that this guy's producing, it's pretty good. And he obviously has some people that listens too, so hey, not too bad. Not too bad. I think because this one's more produced and mixed well, I kind of like this one more. But I mean, he already has like a good amount of following too. Oh yeah. All right, bro. I mean, it's not bad. Let me see that. What did I have next? Thanks for stopping by, though. I appreciate that. So we got Future. We never got.
If you
I don't want to do this one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got you. Oh. All right. Moving on, though. So we got Future Go Aereo, the promised future we never got, man.
The net in the 2000s, or just had a general.
By the way, I love this. Oh my god, I can't speak. I love this aesthetic. I really love this.
Around computers
aesthetic.
at that time, chances are there are a couple things that stood out. You had a digital space that was more or less full of free real estate. We finally had the capabilities to reach anyone around the world instantaneously, but we didn't have the temperament or experience to do it the way we do now. So there was this Wild West feeling too, using computers, filled with ambiguity and uncertainty to where they were headed in the future. Culture of the time indirectly compensated for this through design, quite literally painting a picture for what they wanted the future of computers to look like.
Man, if we can go, bro, if we can go back to this time, bro, I would definitely travel instantly, bro.
That resembled things from the real world, but were just artificial enough for you to know that you had just entered a new one. This unique style has retrospectively been coined the term Frutiger Aero, and for many, it is what you'd call a typical case of nostalgia, particularly for those who were coming of age during the mid-2000s. It represents a time where computers and the internet were simpler, a perfect symbol of the innocence and blissful ignorance of what the internet was going to become. If the internet today was a metropolitan city, in the 2000s, it was an underdeveloped field of wheat, full of so many amazing possibilities. And what if you could show that, quite literally? And when you put it like that, it seems that Frutiger Aero isn't just an aesthetic, but rather a mindset. And for that reason, its place in the digital world and even validity has been brought to question. Yeah, I would not have expected for Frutiger Aero of all things to be controversial, but it is. For many people, it represents what things could have been. How we were essentially...
Ah, man, I just love the simple times. Like, I remember going to the dentist as a little boy, right? And just the dentist was like full of Frutiger Aero type beat, you know?
Something
it was crazy.
Received. And then you have the other side that disagrees with that premise entirely. And today we're going to talk about the origins of Fruitiger Arrow and why this contention even exists to begin with. Fruitiger Arrow is a great example of the type of things that we see when observing decadology. For those who aren't familiar, decadology is an
Study of decades.
unofficial term for the study of particular decades throughout history, primarily the 20th century, and the distinct traits we associate with them and how they came to be. With the 70s, you think of disco and bell-bottoms.
okay.
The 60s, hippies and psychedelic art. The gay 90s, athleticism, social rights and suffragettes, etc.
What?
These are not absolute and exclusive traits, of course, and there is much debate on when a decade culturally starts and ends. But decadology collectively chooses the traits that stand out the most and define these eras throughout history. At the end of the day, it's all completely made up. But it does give quite a bit of insight into human behavior.
Oh my god, wait, was that not recording? Wait. I wasn't recording, bro. Damn it. Let me check. Class. Oh god. What? Bet. Yeah.
There are a couple things.
It was recording.
Through design, quite literally painting a picture.
By the way, I love this. What? Yeah.
As the man entered the cab.
Okay. What do we got?
If you were surfing the net in the 2000s or just had a general
Fruitiger Arrow, the promised
presence around
future we
computers at
never
that
got.
time, chances are there are a
Bro,
couple
I was
things that
recording and it
stood
just
out.
it
You had
didn't.
a digital space
I don't know
that
why I
was
stopped
more or
recording, but
less full of
alright, I
free
already
real
seen
estate.
this though.
We finally had the capabilities to reach
I didn't see the
anyone
whole
around
video,
world
but
instantaneously, but we didn't have the temperament or experience to do it the way we do now. So there was this Wild West feeling too, using computers, filled with ambiguity and uncertainty to where they were headed in the future.
by the way,
Culture
bro,
at the
I
time
love the
indirectly
aesthetic. If I didn't say that
compensated for
already,
design,
which I already
quite
did.
literally painting a picture for what they wanted the future of computers to look like. What you got was a bunch of glossy, photorealistic graphics of buttons and icons that resembled things from the real world.
Man,
but
it
were
was
just
crazy, bro.
artificial enough for you to know that you
Like
had
I
just
said,
entered
if I could go
a new
back in
one.
time, I definitely
This
would,
unique
bro.
style has retrospectively been coined the term Fruitiger Arrow. And
Is
for
that how
many, it is what
Fruitiger
you'd call a typical
Arrow?
case of nostalgia, particularly for those who were coming of age during the mid-2000s.
True.
It represents a time where computers and the internet were simpler, a perfect symbol of the innocence and blissful ignorance of what the internet was going to become.
That's so
If the
true
internet
though.
today was a metropolitan city, in the 2000s, it was an underdeveloped field of wheat, full of so many amazing possibilities. And what if you could show that, quite literally? And when you put it like that, it seems
That's
that Fruitiger
crazy.
Arrow isn't just an aesthetic, but rather a mindset. And for that reason, its place in the digital world and even validity has been brought to question. Yeah, I would not have expected for Fruitiger Arrow of all things to be controversial, but it
I didn't know
is.
that.
For many people, it represents what things could have been. How we were
True.
essentially promised something.
Like I said before, little kid, I remember vividly going to the dentist, and it was literally like Fruitiger Arrow type beat. I remember.
That we never received. And then you have the other side that disagrees with that premise entirely. And today we're going to talk about the origins of Fruitiger Arrow and why this contention even exists to begin with.
I don't know.
Fruitiger Arrow is a great example of the type of things that we see when observing decadology. For
Like I said, study of
those who aren't
decades.
familiar,
Easy.
decadology is an unofficial term for the study of particular decades throughout history, primarily the 20th century, and the distinct traits we associate with them, and how they came to be. With the 70s, you think of disco and bell-bottoms, the 60s, hippies and psychedelic art, the gay 90s, athleticism, socialites and suffragettes, etc.
What?
These are not absolute and exclusive traits, of course, and there's much debate on when a decade culturally starts and ends. But decadology collectively chooses the traits that stand out the most and
Pandemic. End of 2010, start of 2020's COVID-19 pandemic. That's pretty crazy when you think about it, huh? So, iPhone launches, 2008 house crashing is crazy. Columbine. Okay.
define these
That's
eras
crazy.
throughout history. At the end of the day, it's all completely made up. But it does
Yeah.
give quite a bit of insight into human behavior. The reason these decades look the way that they do is often influenced by the technological, financial, and political conditions of the time, and the Frutiger Arrow fad of the 2000s is no exception. In fact, I would even argue that the motivations behind Frutiger Arrow's existence strongly parallel those that were behind the distinct traits of the 1950s.
What?
Betty, how about some of those great hors d'oeuvres? Betty, don't rely on others to do your cooking, you lazy sack. That's when your pal HelloFresh comes in. Help you prepare
Oh my God.
food over fish, including who's very allowing you to wear curry.
W video though, maybe?
Click on breakfast supply today.
When predictable 1950s aesthetic, we think of things that are clean,
Interesting.
serene,
Oh,
predictable,
okay.
simplistic. And now several decades later, we often think that the 1950s were these things, and that everything was just sunshine and rainbows all the time. It
True.
wasn't. Not even close. I don't think I have to tell you that a lot of super messed up stuff was happening in the 1950s.
Oh,
but
wait.
since mass media was very strict at the time, especially television and music, those things were often not talked about, if at all. And because the 50s were a very long time ago, we only remember the positive aspects of that period. This is known as survivorship bias, and it is a contributing factor to the
Wait,
very
what- was
distinct
it like a
style
war
that
or
we
something?
see at this time. I say contributing factor because the reasons the 1950s looked like that are very nuanced, and the environment of the time did contribute to it. It was the end of World War II, and the United States had the geographic advantage of being basically the only developed country that wasn't completely left to ruins. The war effort also
True.
got the country out of the Depression, so they
True.
had both nice infrastructure
W.
and a lot of money. This gave them
So
more
what was
time
wrong?
to focus on improving themselves, and initiatives from President Eisenhower to create things like highway systems allowed for people
W.
to explore unoccupied land much quicker. Much of this land was turned into suburbs, which looked quite clean since they were brand new.
W.
The uniform, cookie-cutter homes were
I don't
not just
see a
byproduct
problem.
of the assembly line culture of the Industrial Revolution. They also symbolized familiarity and predictability. These circumstances created an ideal depiction of what living in America would now look like. Everyone
Yeah.
could just go and start new, wealthier, better, simpler lives and raise their nuclear families. This ambition was flaunted and embellished in the artwork of the time,
True.
just like how the designs and color palettes were clean, simple, and predictable.
Oh, it's like the retro futuristic
So
type.
was the American dream. We then saw this kind of repeat itself in the 1990s. The Cold War was now over. A recession indirectly brought interest
This is
rates
crazy after the wars.
to record low
Good
levels,
stuff,
a
like, you
trend
know,
that we've been
like-
seen throughout the decade.
like
And
bang,
so
bang, bang,
people
bang.
once again had more money and less worry.
Exactly,
Just
see?
like cars on the highway looking for unexplored land, those with computers were now on the digital superhighway looking for unexplored parts of a new technology called the internet. And again, you would then start to see this faux optimism, idealized depiction of
So is
life
that
in
why? I mean,
many facets
interesting.
of the 1990s
So many people say the
style.
90s is like the
computers
best
in the
era,
90s
but
were not that good.
I
But
wasn't there,
thankfully, because
so
of Moore's law,
don't know.
computers were going to get better and more powerful. People just had to wait for it. And that was a big component of this attitude. It's at this time where you start to see a lot of CGI, 3D graphics. That's when
True.
Frutiger Arrow starts to enter the picture. By the 2000s, machine capability had exponentially improved, and computers were much more accessible to everyday people. Once again, these circumstances were reflected in the aesthetics of the time. This was the most apparent in the year 2000, with the release of macOS 10
W.
and their new cutting-edge interface design
Aqua.
known as Agua.
This Agua, brother. By the way, Steve Jobs, bro, literally created a whole new category, and he literally carried the whole decade.
This was then
We would
followed by
never see
Windows
another
XP
Steve Jobs
similar
ever.
design
He's
in
actually the GOAT, I'm not gonna
2001.
lie.
Say goodbye to the archaic, dull look of the 90s. Say hello to the embossed, gradient buttons of the
Cinema.
future. They are
Cinema.
appealing to look at. You could almost reach out and grab them.
Exactly.
Subsequently, this became a huge aesthetic trend throughout the decade, the perfect embodiment of the new millennium.
Mhm.
Following the release of XP, Microsoft wanted to take their OS to the next level, and right after the release of Windows XP, it was already being discussed that the next revolutionary version of Windows was in the works. Their name for it? Longhorn. Longhorn's development history is quite interesting, because when you start looking at Microsoft's overall objectives for the project, you quickly start to see a lot of things, well, becoming disorganized. For instance, Longhorn was initially just meant to be an interim release of Windows, basically just a small update to Windows XP, scheduled to be released very soon after. This would give them a little
Longhorn.
buffer to release
Interesting.
their truly ambitious project, codenamed Windows Blackcomb, which was scheduled to come out in 2002. But as you can imagine, having 3 versions of Windows come out back to back in about 1 year was going to be a lot for Microsoft. So they decided to just make Longhorn. It assumed all the planned features for the now disbanded Blackcomb and planned to be the big revolutionary OS of the century. What Windows 95 did to Windows 3.1, Longhorn was going to do to XP. In many respects, it wasn't just going to be an OS. It would be like interacting with real-life objects, but on a screen, effectively eliminating the need to understand the intricacies of knowing how to use a computer, outside of just the click of a mouse. It was going to be what Microsoft Bob tried to be, but this time with much more ability and, most importantly, better graphics. In fact, a big part of Longhorn's marketing focused on
I see the vision. I see the vision.
They called this design Arrow. A very common typeface called Frutiger was used on many computers at this time. This, of course, being created by Swiss designer Adrian Frutiger. With these distinct styles often complementing each other in this period, you probably now understand where the term Frutiger Arrow comes from. But obviously, it was coined retrospectively. At the time, it was simply Arrow, particularly when referring to the designs Microsoft made for Longhorn. Much like how its scheduling was all over the place, Microsoft's vision for Longhorn was also all over the place. They had many different design concepts for the OS that they showcased as previews, but these didn't exactly match the builds of the OS that were leaked, which really just looked like XP with a slightly different look. Not to mention they had in mind all the features they kept adding onto the OS, like a new security.
Wasn't there like a wallpaper that was like a lily, like a lake or something? It was like interactive and shit. No, there's no way.
A search system quite similar.
Is that a thing? Because I swear I vividly remember.
And a whole new storage system. This would require a ton of under-the-hood changes with the OS, and so people were skeptical that Microsoft was going to be able to even meet their deadline. And ultimately, they were right. Longhorn's release date kept getting postponed, and the code that made up the OS kept getting more and more tangled and convoluted. Things just felt bloated. It was an entire mess. This is what happens when you try to design an OS with next to no tangible plan. Even if the idea was good, the execution was terrible.
Man,
Things
shout
got
out
so
to
messy that Longhorn was canceled completely
programmers.
in 2004. They essentially had to start from scratch at this point. They decided to only keep a handful of these features, the Arrow theme being one of them. And keep in mind, it had already been nearly 5 years since a new Windows had been released. For the sake of time, they had to really water these features down. So 2 years later, we got Windows Vista, which was infamously unstable and
I don't think that was one of the best ones.
Naturally, people were very upset. Instead of Longhorn, we got this? And that enthusiasm for Frutiger Arrow came from these promises from Longhorn. which showed a much more interactive 3D environment. It looks less like a computer and more like a place, and only little bits and pieces of that ended up actually appearing in the finished product. It just wasn't the future people were expecting. But you know, perhaps it was just the wrong time, because this trend for Aero-style skeuomorphism did not stop at Windows Vista. It started to appear on websites, computer programs, television, commercials, basically every digital medium possible. We could make this the future everywhere. I mean, look at this design for old YouTube. So groovy. I mean...
Somewhat. Actually, I was gonna say somewhat better than now, but nah.
I mean,
this YouTube clears. My God, my ears.
It's my opinion that Frutiger Aero would have its peak in around 2009, which would, not coincidentally, be the same year as the release of Mac OS X Snow Leopard. I mean, just look at this
Giga.
icon.
Oh my God.
It looks so good you kind of want to lick it. Steve Jobs' words, not mine. But wait a minute. One is Frutiger Aero and one is Agua. One made by Microsoft, one by Apple. Agua focused more on reflective, abstract textures, literally like tiny water droplets. Aero focused more on combining these photorealistic graphics that simulated interacting with real-life objects.
That's literally Aqua.
These are not the same thing, but they are similar. Where do you draw the line? Well, some would argue that you don't. Heck, these same people are wondering, is this even a thing? Does Frutiger Aero actually represent anything that we just talked about? Or is it—
Yes, it does, bro. I mean, Frutiger Aero represents a whole decade. Like, bro, it's literally like, I don't know how to explain it. You just gotta see it, you
just
know?
an arbitrary term that people have added to a much more broad concept that already encompasses all these attitudes, such as skeuomorphism. Well,
the heck is that?
Cola certainly thinks so in his video on Frutiger Aero. And oh, JJ, I see you garnered some discussion here. I just had an idea. You should make a video about Technicolor. I think the world is ready for a very nuanced take on that subject. Who knows? Could be missing out. In this video, JJ argues that this is just a meaningless term indirectly conceived from nostalgia that shows up from people coming of age every 20 years or so.
Oh, brother.
There's definitely a take I never pictured having, but it was interesting to hear, especially from someone a whole different generation than me.
Brother, you will never, I'm telling you this right now, you will never make me disbelieve the fact that Frutiger Aero is not real. You'll never, you can never do it.
I decided to have a talk with him. Hey man, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Right now I'm playing a little game called How Many
It's real.
Outlet Handle
If that's the case, if it's not real, then the whole 90s aesthetic wasn't real either. Boom, got him. Boom. Next.
The winner keeps their security deposit. I wanted to explore the mind of somebody.
That means
who
your
was
childhood
already an
isn't
adult
real.
by the time Frutiger Aero had become a thing and shares no sentimental value towards it, or really any nostalgia.
Well, no
for
shit, because his childhood was in fucking the
the early
90s
internet, for that matter.
or
My name is
80s.
JJ
Who
McCullough,
knows?
And I'm a YouTuber based out of Vancouver, Canada.
If Frutiger Aero doesn't
Classic
represent the computer culture of the
Canadian.
2000s, what do you think does?
I think it does represent the computer
Bro,
nostalgia
okay.
of that era in a way. I just think that we should probably sort of define it in a much sort of like broader term, right? So I feel like a lot of the Zoomers have this idea that sort of computer aesthetics of sort of the early 2000s were like fundamentally defined by a kind of like nexus of like water imagery and nature imagery. And I just think that the phenomenon is not that precise. But then you also saw a preponderance of all sorts of other imagery. You know, you saw things like Toy
This has to
Story
be rage bait.
or Terminator or Jurassic Park, right? Like computer generated graphics were kind of everywhere, and they were representing all sorts of different things. You know, I think we can sort of fetishize sort of the Frutiger Aero type stuff as being perhaps more representative of overall sort of computer generated aesthetics than they necessarily were.
What
No.
are some examples of
Wrong.
mid-2000s computer culture that you think kind of diverts from that style that makes it not as precise for that time period?
What were sort of the iconic Pixar films of that era? Can we remember?
I'm trying to think. Ratatouille, right? That was like
Yeah, like Ratatouille. Like, is
Cars.
Ratatouille Frutiger Arrow? Like, I don't think so. Like, it's very iconic.
that's fair.
I
The thing
mean,
with
brother, that's a fucking movie. We're talking about computers
Frutiger
here.
Arrow is that it's
Like, huh?
a theory first, and then people are trying to find examples to kind of fit into the theory. You
He's
see
just
a few
wrong.
very
He's
sort of
wrong.
Stock images that are not really from anything specific that people recognize.
It's rage bait. It's classic rage bait. He's wrong, and he knows it. He knows it. He's farming. He's farming.
I'm tired of
He's
seeing
farming.
these videos about Frutiger Arrow that just keep citing the exact same like 5 pictures and
I
saying,
mean,
like,
bro.
oh, doesn't this prove that this thing exists?
Emailing my
He wasn't there to experience it. He was there to experience it when he was in the 90s, probably 80s. I don't know. Who knows? He didn't grow up experiencing it. And just because you don't grow up experiencing it doesn't mean it's not real.
graphic design.
That makes sense.
When I had initially watched JJ's video, my main takeaway from it was that nostalgia for Frutiger Arrow was somewhat based on the premise that the internet is now bad, and that was the reason it disappeared. But then I learned that his stance went much deeper than that.
Do you see the internet now as less exciting than it was back then?
I mean, like, I think the aesthetics of the internet are objectively better. Like, I'm sort of sentimental for how the internet was structured versus now, like sort of the pre-social media internet. But, you know, I'm not really nostalgic about the aesthetics. Like, it was just a case that, like, graphics were uglier. They looked worse, you know. It was much harder to get, like, nice high-resolution photographs and...
Well, no shit. Okay, obviously graphics were worse back then. Like, anybody could say that and then be right. But just because it's something, just because it was bad is what made it nostalgic, bro. I mean, like, what?
You know, videos were non-existent.
Something can be
Slow
bad and it could be,
wonky, and they
it
took
could
forever
still
to
be
load.
nostalgic.
You know, I remember a very common cliche of sort of the early internet was you'd load up some website, and I think there's even a joke about this on The Simpsons, and like just everything is just animated GIFs everywhere. It's like, you know, the dancing baby from Ally McBeal, and then you've got like some rotating 3D smiley face, and just like a lot of just kind of like corny stuff like that. And these graphics were all very ugly, and so I'm like, maybe that's a vibe unto itself, but it's not one that's necessarily appealing to me.
Overall, I think JJ's video was insightful. While I don't exactly agree that the practice of creating labels like Frutiger Arrow is inherently groundless, I do agree with the notion that it is okay to be nostalgic of things just as long as you also remember them as they were.
Yeah,
I do
I mean, isn't that how... Okay, think about it like this, right? You're nostalgic about Minecraft. Let's take Minecraft for an example. Obviously, the person who played Minecraft back then, where it was literally minimum... Like, you can say Minecraft now is better because of the textures, the gameplay, just the feel, the way it ran. But people are still gonna love the nostalgia of how Minecraft was back then, you know, just because it's nostalgic. Because that's what nostalgic, that's what nostalgia does to you, bro. It takes away all the bad, you know, all the bad stuff that you forgot, and it replaces it with good memories, bro. That's literally all of it. That's all it is. And I don't think it's bad to have nostalgia, but you saying like, oh, but you better remember how bad it was. I mean, don't you remember Minecraft couldn't run on my PC? Like, bro, like, really, bro?
That the
Like,
sort of grim, cynical tone that sort
like,
of
I don't know.
exists
I
in
don't
the
know if I'm
digital
making
world
sense
right
or not,
now,
but like, bro,
with things
like,
like AI and dead internet theory certainly contributed to the disappearance of Frutiger Arrow, but I don't think it's telling the full story. As JJ said, part of it is simply that trends just come and go, just like how disco isn't a thing anymore. Neither is Frutiger Arrow. And I think a big part of it is people just quite literally got sick of it.
disco's,
And the
what? Wait, what do you say? Disco's
come and
not...
go, just like how disco said, part of it is simply that trends just come and go.
I mean, it's not a trend, though.
Just like how disco isn't a thing anymore, neither is Frutiger Arrow.
I mean, I think people, like, I think people still not like disco's not alive. I mean, it's still certainly somewhat alive, but like to say that it's not a thing anymore is kind of crazy too.
And I think a big part of it is people just quite literally got sick of it, and the environment that enabled that trend to exist to its full potential could now be used for something else. Why were the 1960s so colorful and psychedelic? Obviously, colorful things existed before, but the 60s took it to a whole other level, to the point where it's a trait that particularly stands out with that decade. Well, color TV finally became a thing, which made it easier to create media that was in color. In fact, 1967 was the first year where more color movies were made than black and white. With this new capability in their hands, they made the most out of it. There's a common hyperbolic joke that's tossed around among historians that in the 60s, everything was just black and white, and then one day people woke up and everything was in color. And in a less extreme, more spiritual sense, this is sort of true. There is quite literally a term for this phenomenon, the summer of love, because the political, technological, and financial circumstances of the time had this crazy social change occur over the course of just a summer. But eventually, color TV became so normal, people just got tired of all the colorful crap, and things got much more dull and gritty looking in the 70s and 80s. Frutiger Arrow had the same fate, but with computers. CGI was getting so easy and so good, people finally had the chance to really take it to great levels, and so they did. Skeuomorphism was also a great way to take an intimidating, abstract concept like a computer interface and transform it into something that resembles the real world, so that non-tech savvy people could understand how to use them better. But once CGI got so good, and once people got so used to how computers worked, the skeuomorphism style was no longer needed and was starting to get old. So, something like...
I just think things just evolve, you know? Things evolve.
Design came in its place. The
That's not bad. It's not bad.
To be more abstract, and it was a fresher look. But now we're reaching the point that people are getting sick of this flat look and further feel that it is.
Yeah, I mean, like, brother, like everything's just like, well, I don't know, man.
Of the current dull, bot-filled climate of the digital world.
Everything's gonna look so like he just said. Everything's gonna look. We're gonna get tired of the simplicity of things, and everything literally looks like AI generated. Like
a monotone, uninspired design for a monotone, uninspired space. And I do think the best way to understand how and why trends
and Frutiger Arrow literally had character to it. That's the whole thing. It had a character. It had livelihood to the actual like designs to it. Nowadays, everything, like he just said, it's just dead. It's just bots. Like it's AI. It's AI.
Is by analyzing it at all angles, and sometimes the overclassification of things is part of that. It's simply human to put a label on everything because we're trying to make sense of everything. It is part of our nature to eliminate any form of ambiguity. The overcategorization of things is something we've seen many times throughout history. In fact, the movie A Hard Day's Night from 1964 even jokes about this when discussing similar yet different music subcultures.
Are you a mod or a rocker?
No, I'm a mocker.
Whether these terms had any contemporary practical use or were coined retrospectively, that human condition is still there. It could very well be an inherent byproduct of the time as well. A comment on JJ's video pointed out that creating names like Frutiger Arrow comes from the need to use keywords in order to search for specific things online, and I do think that's part of it. Perhaps by taking into account all these things and classifying them to the best of our ability, we can make the most sense of them and therefore use them to our advantage. Maybe this is how we can create that future that we saw with Frutiger Arrow. And I don't think this is the end of Frutiger Arrow either. With the rise of augmented reality, we are going to essentially come full circle and, in this realm, introduce 3D style graphics, Because not only
mean-
will it make this new technology easier to understand, it is quite literally designed to take you to a cleaner, more idealized world.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, if you had to choose between mods or rockers, sometimes it's okay to just be a mocker. Oh, and you should support me on Patreon as well. Patreon. Oh, and
Got
Bell
him.
Bottoms, the
Okay.
60s.
Okay, this was a year ago. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, good video, W video. Shout out to the guy that made this. I think it's good to just disagree on some things, maybe. Or not even him, the other guy that he had on. But anyways, I just think that some of his points, not him, but the other guy's points that he brought on, just he was rage baiting. I'm not gonna lie. Honestly. Yeah, that's what I think though. Let's keep it moving though. What do we got next? Ooh, I like this one.
Flash games, ML.
Now we're gonna have an actual good take. Actual good take here. My God, what the heck? Okay. Okay. I just hear bass in my whole house. Alright, why did the 2010s look like that? Okay. Good takes are gonna be in this video. After the last
Flash
video,
games,
I swear.
MLG, Trollface, and Swag. The internet was a very different place in the 2000s.
This one's gonna be cinema,
Memes
bro.
used to
I
look
already
like
know.
this, and YouTube was filled with content you couldn't make today. Regardless of whether you fell in love with Vaporwave or spent way too long watching shooting star memes, you might be wondering where all of this went and what it
I grew
even
up
was.
on this YouTube,
So
bro.
as things get stranger and stranger, we'll dig into the 2010s to try and find out why.
Bet. Let's do it. Classic. Classic.
It's 2024 and everything has a name, including this visual style from the early 10s. Known as
Internet
Open
awesome
Source, it was
what?
most prevalent from 2008 to 2016. There's a suspicious correlation between the popularity of the word epic and the use of images like these. Common elements were rainbows,
Oh,
cats,
okay, yeah,
dinosaurs,
true.
unicorns,
Everybody
and
was,
lasers.
bro, everybody had that one person that they knew that was wearing cat shit, like
People were obsessed with lasers.
space cats
Outside of memes
and
like
lasers.
this aesthetic could be seen all over the internet. The intro of Uncle Grandpa is a good example, showing him riding a tiger propelled by rainbows. It was also used in games, with Robot Unicorn Attack from 2010 exemplifying the style. Other instances can be found in PewDiePie's Tuber Simulator, in minigames like Puggle and Techno Kitten Adventure. If you were browsing
I remember,
YouTube in
I forgot he
2011,
had that.
you might have even seen Le Internet Medley, which boasted over 40 memes in one song. With the flying yarn cats and rainbow puke, there isn't much more you could ask for. But anyway, why was this kind of humour and style so popular? While a lot of these were ironic, rainbows and unicorns formed the comedic basis of too many memes to count. Nyan Cat was close to the top of the most viewed videos in 2011.
That's crazy.
making it a cultural phenomenon.
Rebecca Black Friday. Nah. Jack Sparrow? Nah. Nyan Cat?
This and the
Nah,
popularity of things like
that's
Shooting
crazy.
Stars influenced the fascination with combining explosions and lasers to make the most epic image possible. To truly
Dubstep,
appreciate this,
oh
you've got
my-
to understand that at the time, random equaled funny. Coupling a
True.
mythical, peaceful creature like a unicorn with destruction and chaos.
Wait,
did not
true. Random equal funny.
look
True.
cool. It was unexpected and therefore
That was so
humorous.
true back then.
This and the popularity of My Little Pony are big
Oh,
reasons
my-
videos like pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows have tens of millions of views. If we look at some other trends from around 2011, this begins to make a bit more sense. With social media on the rise, it was easier to make and share clips to a wider range of people. The idea of trolling was also gaining traction.
Oh my
meaning that
God.
humor often leaned into the absurd and confusing. Naturally, Awesome Sauce perfectly slots into this landscape, with its use of random combinations and niche internet memes.
True. MLG, bruh. Ah, rest in peace.
If you never had
Phase.
XX_ as part of your username, you were
Classic.
doing something wrong.
True.
Brain rot of today pales in comparison to the content juggernaut that was MLG. You might have watched MLG Peppa Pig, Game of Thrones, or any number of trickshot edits. If it was really bad, maybe you even got caught downloading green screen packs and piecing together your own. Some of the more iconic visuals were Snoop Dogg, random quickscopes,
Oh my God.
orange Doritos, and COD hit markers. Pyrocynical was a major perpetrator, being the man behind MLG Teletubbies and furry inflation art. I find it crazy to look back and see the views on some of these videos. Many are well above 10 million, which speaks to the absolute chokehold they had on the
Dude, that's so
internet.
crazy.
Another recurring detail was Illuminati confirmed, which would often involve
Oh, I remember
text-to-speech
that.
voice linking random things to the all-seeing eye. With that and enough explosions and air horns, you could turn any no-scope into a work of art. Outside of the visuals, they featured numerous sound effects and songs that are probably imprinted deep within your temporal lobe. If you weren't humming it already, My Hope Will Never Die or Holdin' On was the most iconic, with the X-Files
Oh my
theme
God.
also playing a major role. The
Ba-na-na-na.
horrific audio of successful trickshot reactions was featured a lot too. If you're a real one, comment with the rest of this phrase. These kinds of edits can
Triple.
be traced back to
Oh
as
my
early
God.
as 2011.
Classic.
Specifically, a World of Warcraft video made by Jamal. With the green screen overlay of a quickscope, it provides the first known example of an MLG style montage. The reason such videos
Was this guy the
is in
GOAT?
name, Major League Gaming. Professional esports teams would release highlight reels that went on to inspire fans to begin making their own.
Nah, that's
With many of
crazy.
these simply being replays recorded by an iPhone, they were usually much worse in quality and far more amusing. As the internet did its thing, these became more and more deranged, and eventually
The classic. Mom, get the camera. Mom, get the camera. Nah, classic.
Unlike the memes of today, MLG lasted a few years before losing traction, disappearing, for the most part, in 2017.
Oh,
Even though the last decade was only a few years ago, things have changed a lot online. Here on YouTube, this is especially apparent. A perfect case study
True.
for this is the rise and fall of Let's Plays. Let's Plays are the reason many of your favorite YouTubers are your favorite YouTubers.
true. True. You know what?
Broadly, this style of
True.
video involved commentary over clips of a video game that focused on the player's experience.
I have
of
so
it
many
rather than how
deleted videos of Let's
The general
Plays. I'm not gonna
format
lie.
is credited to Michael Sawyer, or Slowbeef, whose 2007 playthrough of The Immortals is widely considered to be the first modern Let's Play.
That's
As YouTube
crazy.
began to take off, this style of video did as well. People like PewDiePie would emerge with wildly successful series like his horror playthroughs. The draw here wasn't just the game, it was his reactions and experience of it. By naming enemies and objects like Stefano, he built up his own lore inside these videos that kept people coming back regardless
True.
of the game he was playing. Markiplier found similar success with his
Oh
Five
my-
Nights at Freddy's Let's Plays.
I remember,
The first of which was
bro.
uploaded in August of 2014 and currently sits at over 100 million views.
That's so crazy.
Today, however, Let's Plays are seemingly a thing of the past.
Yeah.
At least as a method of blowing up. Arguably, this is mostly due to the oversaturation of gaming content on the site. Making a video titled Let's Play XYZ Episode 3 isn't as likely to take off anymore in a sea of very similar videos. The current
I mean,
landscape does, however, favour challenge videos with an interesting premise, like the Fallout series by It's Jarbo.
you know what? This is actually true though, because if you have something with the twist of a
Another
challenge,
reason Let's Plays have
Oh,
disappeared
yeah.
is
Oh,
they
yeah.
haven't. They've just moved. Instead of watching a YouTube video, much of the audience for Let's Plays has shifted over to streaming.
yeah,
Here they can tune in whenever they want and watch a content creator they like play the game for much longer periods of time. Moving on, if you ever watched the Cake Trilogy...
And it's weird to say that we used to just watch a video of someone like, you know, edited, but now we want everything. Like we want beginning to end. You know, it's crazy.
Frank, iDubbbz and Max Mofo, you likely remember when shock humor reigned supreme. By around 2016, this had
Oh, I remember this.
Gaming content becoming slightly less popular. In an interview with Trash Taste, PewDiePie refers to this as the Filthy Frank era, a time when even he adapted to the change by making edgier content with a raspier voice.
Hey guys, can I take your boyfriend for a ride?
Can if you want.
He's in.
This was partially the byproduct of ambiguity surrounding YouTube's content policies.
Classic.
It wasn't as clear of a line between unacceptable and acceptable practices. People were maintaining high viewerships and growing exponentially while saying and doing things that would be pulled from the site today. For example, the Cake Trilogy was retroactively removed following a more recent reaction from PewDiePie.
Man.
This likely reminded YouTube that they still existed and didn't align with the updated content guidelines. In 2017, we saw the beginning of this with the Adpocalypse.
Oh
At
god.
the time, this felt like a huge deal, with many large channels being legitimately concerned about their income. The term describes a mass withdrawal of advertisers from YouTube following several large-scale controversies. Many were no longer comfortable showing ads on content that wasn't family-friendly,
Yeah.
resulting in some channels receiving ads while others didn't. For creators like Filthy Frank, this made it all but impossible to make money from their videos. This meant that
Rip.
there was less incentive to make edgy, humorous content, and it quickly declined in popularity. Some of these YouTubers adapted and continue to thrive on YouTube today.
Aware.
Others, like Frank, haven't been seen since 2017. I have, however, found an artist called Joji
Isn't
who
he-
sounds
yeah.
strangely similar to Pink Guy.
Isn't he just whatever? Like Joji, right?
It's hard to categorize something as unpredictable as memes, let alone analyze their use through an entire
You know what's
decade.
crazy? I predict, right, since streaming's the new way, I predict something else could take off, you know? I predict that maybe IRL streaming might be the next wave, even though it was back then. It could be IRL streaming or just something different, you know?
We're gonna do it anyway. Thanks to Reddit users like
Or
Mixcloud,
streaming
there's
might
been
just
many
be the
attempts to
meta,
organize them into
just for
specific eras. Today, we'll
the
be
next
focusing
5
on
years,
Reddit
maybe, I
in
don't
the
know.
2010s.
Whatever
Rage,
it is, I'm gonna try to
Dark,
adapt.
and surreal. Starting with Rage, this term is derived
Shout out
from
Phase.
Rage Comics, which began in 2008 on sites like 4chan. These would typically be short, with 4 panels based around humorous or irritating real-life experiences. The common thread was a collection of so-called rage faces made in MS Paint. You'll recognize Troll Face, Rage Guy, Why You Know Guy, and Serial Guy. This
That's
became more
crazy.
widespread with the inception of r// in 2009. Funnily enough, this is still active,
Nah.
although not nearly as prolific. Top and bottom text memes were pretty big at this time as well, slapped on top of images like Bad Luck
Bro,
Brian.
this meme format, I swear to God, was like peak. I'm not
Overly
gonna lie,
Attached
bro.
Girlfriend and Boromir. These all followed simple formulas that anyone could relate to
True.
and make themselves.
True.
All it required was an internet connection, the impact font, and a dream. As 2013 rolled around, we can identify a shift into the dank meme era. Here, memes
Oh,
became
God.
considerably more abstract and less centered around understandable and
Just
repetitive
random.
tropes like these. This period encapsulates the
Oh my God, remember just the randomness of like all the memes that were just popping up, like the one where the guy's like on the boat, he's like, "Hey, don't go down, hey, go down," and we just never see the end. I don't think, or like just random people falling.
MLG,
That
the
was
use of
crazy.
these glasses, and Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life. Still,
I remember
these were
that.
far from the most iconic. 9+10, Harambe,
Oh my
Baby
God.
Nation, We Are Number One, and
21?
Do You Know the Way all emerged in a similar time frame. Instagram meme accounts started to become huge,
Oh,
almost part
yeah.
of a multi-platform ecosystem that produced, propelled, and modified memes throughout their life cycle. A big reason some of these were so bizarre and nonsensical was that Gen Z was growing up and becoming increasingly active on social media. By using
True.
themes and references that only they could understand, they distanced themselves
my
from older
God.
generations and formats. This is also why some of them were quite edgy, with all of it playing a role in forming their own distinct online identity. You can see this reflected in the creators who are popular among the demographic. As I
True.
mentioned before, if you weren't watching Let's Plays, you might have tuned into Max Mofo, iDubbbz, or Filthy Frank, who had
I was a more Let's Player type of
most
viewer.
shared memes and phrases. A perfect example of this is the green screen of It's Time to Stop, which appeared in hundreds of edits on multiple platforms.
True.
Next up is the Surreal era that kicked off in the late 2010s. This was home to deep-fried memes.
Oh
grab
god,
rave,
I remember
and of
this
course,
one.
the release of Fortnite. To be honest, things started to take a turn.
Oh
for the
my
worse.
god.
Deep-fried memes were made by running an image through a filter over and over, until it became warped and barely legible. This would be combined with an equally ridiculous piece of text, if any at all. Surreal memes, on the other hand, often featured this guy. He was associated with things like the layers of irony and the term irony, popping up everywhere online. Mr. Orange, or Orang, is another example. Consistent with its name, this humor operated on a similar premise to much older memes. To be random and
I don't know this guy.
Not many of these made sense, and it was often that and their absurdity that made them entertaining. Happy Wheels,
Interesting.
Bloons Tower Defense, and The Impossible Quiz
Classic.
have one thing in common. They are all Flash games.
We watched a video about Flash. You don't know about it? Check it out right here. Bang, Bang, right there.
The mid-2000s and the early 2010s are considered
Classic.
the golden age for this kind of gaming.
I actually made...
Mid-2000s and
Hold
the
on.
early 2010s are considered the golden age for this.
actually made a meme on this. It was like in middle school, and it's actually the most popular thing that we were doing, and I got to eat whatever pick of lunch I wanted. So I think I picked Jason's Deli. You know,
Kind of gaming. Most of my exposure to these titles was on Cool Math.
Not to
games,
flex
where
or
I spent
anything,
hours
but
playing
yeah.
Fireboy and Water Girl and Papa's Diarrhea. I distinctly remember spamming the source until I had a stack about 3 feet tall.
oh
selling it
my
for
god.
$0 and then quitting
What
the
the
game.
hell?
Turning back time even further, Flash first released in 1996. People eventually figured out that it was possible to make games on it, with many of them starting to pop up in the early 2000s. The website Newgrounds emerged at a similar time. It soon became a massive platform for
Newgrounds was peak, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
Flash games. This website made it possible for almost anyone to produce, share, and play others' work online, with the only requirement being a clickable link. Of course, these games weren't limited to Newgrounds, as they could be embedded and accessed through any other website, like Cool Maths games. This meant that if your game was
Oh my
received well in
god,
one
Cool
place,
Maths,
there was
bro.
always a chance it could
My favorite, bro. I swear to god, Cool Maths
take
was...
off in another. As a result,
Oh
it's no
man, the
surprise that
games you
some
could
of these
just play
games
on there, bro.
became massive. Happy Wheels was, and still is, huge. YouTubers like PewDiePie and Markiplier did Let's
Oh
Plays
my.
that received millions
Yes,
of views.
yes.
Jacksepticeye uploading as recently as April 2024.
That's...
By now,
damn.
you've likely heard that Flash is no longer a thing.
Yeah,
You
right.
might be surprised to learn that the end of Flash games was heralded by Steve Jobs way back in 2010. In his famous Thoughts on Flash letter, he criticized Adobe for Flash's security issues, poor
We've seen
performance,
this.
and the fact
Seen
that
a
it was
video on
closed
this.
system. This meant that Apple would have less control over the software and any bug fixes, being one of the main reasons they refused to support it on iOS. As the years passed and things like HTML5 rose to prominence and offered more security, Flash sped towards the inevitable. Soon enough, Adobe announced its end of life
Man, rest in peace,
2017,
Flash,
and
bro.
Flash took its last breath in 2020. Thankfully, many of these games were preserved, and it's entirely possible to still play them. This isn't to say, however, that thousands weren't lost to time.
Yeah. Vaporwave. This one's
If you
interesting.
recognize this image, you most likely remember Vaporwave. This picture is the cover of Floral Shop, an album made by the artist Vectroid. The most iconic song from the selection was Lisa Frank 420. This was used everywhere, in memes, edits, and often as part of YouTube outros. Of course, Vaporwave was much more than just a
Is this the
subgenre of
song that's
music.
playing?
It was also a distinct and fascinating aesthetic that began on the internet. Common features included retro 3D graphics, pink and purple pastels, dolphins, and foliage. After its inception in the early years of the decade, Vaporwave began to rapidly spread over numerous platforms. Whether you found it on commentary channels or songs on Bandcamp,
Yeah,
it
Leafy-
quickly became
Leafy uses,
undeniably
huh?
huge, peaking at around 2015.
This is
There was
where I
even an
remember
entire
that.
game called MoreQuest made in this style. Copies of this
Leafy was probably ahead of his time making those type
can
videos.
still be found online, although the original version was taken down. It was described as a procedurally generated shopping sim, and it actually looked pretty cool. Returning to design, you might notice that, for an aesthetic born in the 2010s, it feels a bit out of place. That's
Yeah.
because most of the imagery you're seeing here was heavily inspired by the 80s and 90s. This transcended architecture, with one of the most influential artifacts being a game. Echo the Dolphin for the Sega Genesis informed music and aesthetics alike, largely responsible for the heavy use of dolphins in design. Looking at Floral Shop, one of the songs is even named after this title. If you were big on Vaporwave in the 2010s, there's a good chance you recall some of its numerous subgenres. I've mentioned this before, but one of my personal favourites is Mallsoft. Being quite literal, this repairs shops and plazas with subtle edits to bring out their colour. Another recognisable style is Synthwave. While sharing similar elements to Vaporwave,
Classic.
it's actually an entirely separate aesthetic. Where it celebrates the neon colours and media from the 80s, Vaporwave presents a more satirical and at times political reflection of the 80s and 90s. Synthwave is responsible for all of the backgrounds you had that looked like this.
I like that
Endless grids,
type of
cityscapes,
aesthetic. I
and
think it's
cars.
cool.
I don't remember how many times I put on one of these videos, but it was definitely more than once.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, unlike other aesthetics in this video, Vaporwave and Synthwave are still active in smaller online communities. While they are far from their previous position in the mainstream, you can still find new releases if you know where to look.
That's crazy. Swag.
You either
Oh
have
my
it or you
god.
don't, but if you're subscribed, you definitely do. Swag in this context
Dude,
describes a
this
style of
was
fashion
crazy,
that was very
bro.
popular in the early 2010s. While the word itself had been around for years before, pieces
Swag.
like "You Were a Jerk" by the New Boys jump-started this
You were a
new
jerk. I know.
manifestation, which continued for a couple years in the form of music and clothing. To be swagged out involved flat brim caps with the brim intact, racks spent on clothes and more hats, and your front and back labelled with Obey draped in knickknacks. These
Obey and Bape. Oh my
caps
god,
were often
bro.
brought down to cover your eyes in
The amount
photos,
of
which would
that
then be put through the first
company
filter
had a
available on
chokehold
Instagram or Tumblr.
on the
People don't
freaking
really use these
generation. It's
anymore when
crazy.
posting, but good lord were they popular back then.
Oh god.
Scroll down far enough through anyone's account, without liking anything of course, and you'll find a world of yellow, grainy filters and vignettes. Shutter shades were also pretty big at the time, with people like Kanye frequently wearing them. Anyway, swag was boosted along by artists like Lil B, who posted the song I Own Swag in 2012.
Dude, that's
The term
crazy.
then was rapidly becoming widespread, in tandem with the production of too many ridiculous caps to count. This entire trend produced some of the most bizarre and iconic fits of the 21st century. Zendaya had some absolutely
Oh
diabolical
my.
drip, and Justin
Oh
Bieber was
my god. Nah, he ain't have to do him that
Halfway through
bad.
the decade, swag started to slow down, and massive Obey caps became less and less desirable.
Yeah.
The word itself evolved to become more ironic, and was largely replaced by words like drip among younger generations.
True. Now it's drippy.
By 2013, the use of what is now known as Fruitiger Aero had largely vanished. For a time, after its
we just
decline,
watched
a
the
similar
video.
aesthetic became more popular in corporate design. This is referred to as
Oh.
Fruitiger Metro. You might have seen it on your Xbox 360,
Yeah.
CDs, or textbooks. At the time, this style marked the beginning of more flat and minimalist approaches to UI. After all, it
okay.
gets its name from the Metro design language created by Microsoft. This emphasized simple geometric patterns and shapes, absent of the glossy 3D look of the past. Windows 8 is a prime example of this, with its colorful selection of tiles and icons.
True.
The aesthetic is also known as
I don't mind. I don't mind this. I don't mind that aesthetic.
and glossiness. When looking at these designs, you'll notice the prevalence of speakers, dancing silhouettes, and swirls of color. It was pretty much the stock choice for making a product appear more interesting than it actually was. By slapping it on a CD or a poster, you
Yeah.
can quickly add some vibrancy and energy. Much like Vaporwave, even it can be divided into smaller.
Oh man, wait.
equally
This is definitely classics right here.
recognizable
What the heck?
categories. For example, Funky Metro, centered around instruments, DJs, and dancing, is
Oh,
a lot
this is
different to
crazy.
Grungy Metro, which relates to scene and darker colors. Outside of its classifications, you could spot Fruitiger Metro in
Wait.
a bunch of advertisements. This
Nah,
one
this is
particularly
crazy.
is an interesting example, showing Jack Black amidst bright splashes of color. Going as far back as 2004, we can find some of its earlier appearances, like the ad shown here. You'll notice that, much like Fruitiger Aero, nature still played a big role in these designs.
Yeah,
When
but
shown alongside technology, this was likely done to help it appear less intimidating and more accessible. By animating things like plants and dolphins, devices could feel less alien and more familiar. The use of this style today has been overwhelmingly shelved in favour of minimalism, meaning it kind of served as a transitional period between the maximalist aesthetics of the 2000s and the flat
Yeah.
designs of today.
agree.
Looking at other videos we've done on this channel on the 90s and the 2000s, you can make out clear, long-lasting, and distinct aesthetic styles. A lot of these were used by
I need to watch that
corporations to make
one.
technology appear advanced,
Y2K.
hinged on an almost fantastical anticipation for the future. By the 2010s, this future was well underway, and with it, the internet. If you
Oh
weren't
my
watching at the start
god,
of it,
that
you
guy.
definitely were before the end, and I
Is that
know
a
this
whole
because
Halo
you're
suit,
a
brother?
idiot. The number of people who
Dude.
are online more than doubled from 2010 to 2020, meaning that people's experiences of the world were increasingly informed by things on the internet. And so the reason the 2010s looked like that is you.
Yeah, I
media
guess,
like
yeah.
YouTube videos, vines, flash games, and memes sculpted millions of people's lives even outside of the internet. Simultaneously, this media started to become people's lives. Making videos with a shitty webcam was suddenly profitable, and the creation
True.
of content was something anyone could do. So while some of it may be cringe now, all of it played a role in creating what many consider to be the golden age of the internet.
True. Is this the classic? Oh, it's over. Dang, that was a good video. What the heck? This was a really good video. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah. Anyways. Oh, how was that? Alright. That's all I wanted to react to today, honestly. We got those 3 videos done. Even had a little song request thingy done too, but yes sir. What's going on? Honestly, it's really fun. Really fun. More things. Alright. I'm finna head out though. Peace. More reaction streams obviously coming. I enjoyed it a lot. Alright.